Okay, so we see I got all the information in the email. The color is the hexadecimal code for it. The dates, and you can see I got all that information that I entered. My date, my time, email, and so forth. There's no subject. I probably should add a subject to it because it's looking for a subject. If we look at this code, and this may be a little hard to read, but this is basically the PHP code. I'll just go over it briefly. We're not really into PHP just yet. But basically, this for loop, which if you don't know what for loops are, just don't worry about it. We'll talk about it later. Gets everything passed in and uses the mail command to email it all to me. We'll get into that a little more later. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to get into server-side scripting too much just yet. But you can see all that information on the web page got emailed to me. The telephone number here. Interesting. It used something called a pattern to figure out the that it wasn't built in, and which is good actually in a way. I don't want to go through pattern matching today; it's complicated. The criticisms I was going to say is that that telephone format's a very American format. So if you have people from other countries, you know, they're going to have a different format. So, but actually, it looks like based on that pattern there, you can change the format. To go through each one, the input color will enable you to pick a color, as you can see, both the Google one and the Safari one use the color palette to do it, and they all will eventually. But not too many are compliant yet, and of course Microsoft is the absolute worst when it comes to being compliant to HTML5. The autofocus attribute is an optional attribute that can be used in only one input element on a form. Basically, it automatically gives focus to the input element, allowing the user to begin typing there. If we look at the source here, I think probably what we'll see is that the very first one had autofocus turned on. Normally, you do want to put the focus on the first one, but with this, you can actually put the focus wherever you want. Yeah, so it's on the color element, although you can put it wherever you want. You don't need to include it, but it's generally a good idea if you want people to start typing immediately. Again, that's would put the focus there. Validations of new HTML input types are self-validating on the client side, eliminating the need to add complicated JavaScript. And I don't know if any of you have any experience with doing client-side validation with JavaScript. You know it's complicated. Well, a lot of these new input types are self-validating, which is awesome. It's going to save a lot of time in new applications. However, this really doesn't stop you from validating on the server. And the reason being is that it's really... hackers love server-side scripts that assume the browser is pre-validated, because that's how they can get into them. The server always has to assume that someone's trying to hack in, which means the server needs to revalidate the data when it gets it down. Client-side validation is more like a convenience offered to the customer to let them know their data is valid or not valid before it comes down to you. But you still need to validate it. You know, it's just unfortunately, because you can't trust the browser. I mean, the server should never trust the browser. So even though the browser may validate this data, the server should validate it again. And that's always been the case, that the server revalidates, because the server should always assume that the browser or whatever data that's coming to it from the internet is the result of some sort of hack job, and they shouldn't trust it. If you put in invalid input, you'll get this error message, which we saw. When I tried to submit before, remember when I put in an incorrect phone number, I got this message here. It says, please match the requested format. That means that you have to enter in a valid value in that format. Now, I can tell you I've written JavaScript to do this pre-HTML5, and it's kind of a pain. So it's really nice that HTML5 now does this for you. And there are a bunch more. We show there's a bunch of date time ones as well. Here's a basic summary of what you have, and we looked at all of them. Ultimately, they all come down to the server as data. You can bypass the validation by saying no validate in the input. You can say don't validate, and which if you look down here on your submit button, you could say no validate. I would think that would really be the exception, not the rule. For the most part, you really want to validate, so that generally would be the exception. The date input type, there's a number of them there, but the one that you're getting it is a typical format of YYYY-MM-BB. And that's going to be the most universal, since different cultures have different ways of expressing dates. And that's generally considered universal to go to the highest, from the highest, which is the year, down to the lowest, which is the day. You can enter it here. Looks in this reading, as you can see, is already outdated because it says that Chrome and Safari display a spinner control. And actually, that is true of Safari, the way Safari was doing it, a spinner control. I don't know if there are any updates that I can get on Safari to see if there's anything new. Is there an update? It's 5.17. Don't know if that's the latest version. But we can see that Chrome, when we click on that, gives us a calendar control. This was not there as of the writing of this book. And the publishing of this book occurred actually not too long ago. Only about a month or two ago. So that is obviously very new to Chrome. And again, I don't even know if I've got the latest version of Chrome here, actually. Okay, Google Chrome is up to date in its version 21. Something or other. Okay, so I do have the most current version of Chrome. So seems like Opera is the most compliant with implementing this stuff so far. Opera's a good browser. I've actually really liked Opera as well. I always go back and forth between Chrome, Opera, and Firefox as to which one I like more. Though Firefox has really been falling down a lot. Never liked IE. It's terrible. The worst browser there is. Date time input, again, lets the user to enter in a date and a time. On the way I think it's meant to be on the date time is it's going to, or at least the way Opera's doing it, is it gives you a calendar control, and then you can change the time with a spinner. You could probably go in there and type it as well if you want, I'm sure. Daytime local is the same thing, but it it's in a single control. Let's take a look at it. It doesn't look like it's in a single control. Works the same as date time, but it's based on local time versus UTC, which is the universal time, something or other. Used to be called Greenwich Mean Time. I changed it to UTC, I guess, for whatever reason. So it says, i.e. Firefox and Safari all display a text field. Chrome and Opera obviously display the control, the daytime control. Email input type enables the user to enter an email address, and we see that it validated that if I didn't put it in a valid format, it gave me an error message. So it validates it, which is really nice. These input controls. It'll be really nice when all the browsers support this stuff because it can make validation so much easier. And again, you would get an error message from the browser saying that it's not a valid email if you did something like that. And so I think when I did something like pound sign instead of the @ sign, I got an error message as well. Again, I don't know how many people have ever done JavaScript form field validation, but you probably see this for the blessing it is. Placeholder allows you to put in sort of a almost like a hint in a grayed out format as to what should go in there, or what format should go in there anyway. And I think we had that under email. Oh, here it says search query. Here you see an email address, or rather a URL that's grayed out. When you click in there, well, it doesn't go away. But when you start typing, it does. And again, it would validate that as well if I didn't put in a valid URL. Focus is placed on a text field. The placeholder text disappears. That's not really the case. When I put the focus in, which one did I do it in? I did it in Opera. No, sorry. When I put the focus in there in Google, it didn't go away. It went away as soon as I started typing. But again, you got to realize that this book was being established as the browsers were implementing it. So everything you see here may not be 100% correct. It may be a little out of date or a little off. So, but that's because HTML5 is such a quickly emerging standard, and part of that reason is that everyone has pretty much agreed to use HTML5 for every type of application there is, whether it's a mobile phone application or a desktop application, web application, tablet application. Pretty much it's the only thing that everyone has agreed to use. So it's becoming universal. And because of that, there's a demand to get it supported really quickly. So everyone's kind of rushing in HTML5 support. And it's not quite there yet. Required is another nice attribute that says they have to enter a value there. That wasn't there in the old HTML, HTML4. It's new. It's nice. These form fields are going to allow you to do a lot less JavaScript programming, which is awesome. Not that I dislike JavaScript programming, but I've got better things to do with my time than field validation that a monkey could do. So you've got your date type, month type as well. Number would use I think a spinner to pick the number. Yeah. So you can only enter numeric values, and it allows you to put in a range. So, again, if we were to look at this code, which I have here, under the number, I'm able to set a minimum number, a maximum number, step, which is how many to go, and a start value. I mean, this eliminates really any need for JavaScript validation on that. You can't imagine what else you would need to validate. Same thing on the range. It's 0 to 20. And it sets it in the middle, and this uses a little whatchamacallit here, slider to set that number. Also pretty nice. And you have to put in a value that matches that range, so you can't go out of the range even if you type the number in. Right, no matter what. I can't type in 30. Of course, I'm going to have to fix this before it gives me any validation on the other one. Oops. It'll give me, okay, so the value must be less than or equal to 7. It provides a field for entering a query. The input is functionally equivalent to the input of a text. Yeah, I'm not sure why they have this query anymore. So I don't think it really does anything. Allows you to clear it. That's about it. Maybe at some point you'll be able to tie it to a search engine. I'm not sure. But right now, search doesn't seem to do very much. Any questions so far? The telephone input enables the user to enter a telephone number. Mobile browsers typically display a keyboard specific to entering a phone number for this input. So this is one area where your mobile browser will, know what to do. It doesn't self-validate telephone number inputs, and that's really because there's really no way to do it. There's one type of validation for the U.S. and Canada and some Caribbean islands, but that validation does not work in Mexico or Europe or Asia, which has different types of validation. So it doesn't actually do it. What they do is they allow you to put in something called a regular expression. And yeah, I don't want to get into regular expressions right now because it's kind of an advanced programming topic. So it's just a pattern or a template that says that it must fall within that range. Maybe when we get much deeper into JavaScript, we'll talk about patterns and regular expressions. But like I said, that's kind of an advanced topic. So I don't want to really get into it. So it's got to match the pattern, and you can change the pattern. Again, if we look at the pattern here for this is it. That's what the pattern looks like, and I understand exactly what it means, but I don't really want to go into it because there's a lot. I don't know if any of you there know the pattern matching. Time again will force a valid input of a time with the 2 colons and 2 digits representing the minute. Optionally, you can have digits representing the seconds or fraction of a second. That's fairly rare for people to enter even seconds. I mean, normally people just enter the time and that's it. Pretty rare to enter anything more than that. Really probably no reason. Now we can see that Chrome is not doing anything at all, unless maybe it'll okay, so let's put this back down to that. Please fill it. Okay, so let's fill this in how it's required. Okay, it just went, it looks like. It went to the wrong place. It went to Dytel's website. We don't want to do that. Anyway, it didn't validate the telephone number, or sorry, the minutes. It did not validate the minutes. And let's see if looks like, yeah. Looks like Opera would. So it's actually looking like Opera is the most HTML5 compliant browser right now. It's a little shocking. I thought Google would have been better. All right.